what is product discovery and why is it different from what we've always done? Man, I would say it's not different from what we've always done, but it also is different from what we've always done. So, product discovery is all of the work that you do that's about planning for the future, right? So, if in order for a team to deliver some piece of work, you need to do a bunch of research or you need to create some designs or or whatever's right. Another team has to do something before it gets to our team. All of that from our perspective is discovery work. That may be work for the other team, right? But from our perspective, it's discovery work. It's discovering this item. It's making ensuring that we understand that item as much as possible, and not just focused on the items that we know we want. Discovery also focuses on the items we don't know we want. So how do we find the things that are going to enable our product to be better, that's going to enhance our users' experience, that's going to open up new markets, increase our user base? Those are all things that we would do as part of discovery. Scrum calls it refinement, right? Although I think refinement's probably a little bit tighter scope than discovery. Discovery is a lot bigger. But it's something that we have always done. It's just not always been explicit. It's not always been something that we say, this is that body of work, who's accountable for organizing that body of work. And in the Scrum world, that would be the product owner, right? They're accountable for maximizing the value of the work done in the product. But in whatever process you're using, somebody needs to be directing that. It's not necessarily okay for there to be no direction. So part of discovery will be figuring out what your goals are, what your vision is, and what your goals are. What is it you're trying to achieve as a business, or what is it that your product's trying to achieve? What direction are you going, and then what are the steps you want to try and take to get there, and then figuring out what do you need to do in your product to get there. A great example, I think, at scale is the Azure DevOps team. At least when I worked with them a few years ago, the scale of that team, I think they were up to 90 plus teams at one point working on this one big product. So that's a lot of work to feed that engine that is delivering value, that those teams working together, hopefully highly effective teams, but teams. So they set strategic direction at the high level, and then there's a bunch of discovery that has to go on at that level. Like, where are we going? What are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? Right? Think of it like that's like portfolio. What are your value propositions for your product? How do you think you're going to be able to affect those? And then they come up with ideas through the structure. This is what we want to build, and then send it to the next level down within that larger product organization and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. You go figure out what's going to make it happen. So then discovery launches again at that level. What do we think? Perhaps this is Azure boards, right? We're trying to help the business achieve this outcome they're trying to achieve. What do we think we can do to help make progress towards that goal or those goals, right? And then they might have 20 teams working on that idea. So they would create their level, like, what is it we think we're going to try and achieve? How do we want to move the needles? And then they're going to give that to the teams below, and the teams below are going to be like, okay, here's what we're trying to achieve all the way up the chain, right? All the way up to the product vision. What do we need to do to make progress towards those goals and that vision? Actually, a really good example, I've got another example, which is maybe more people will have experience of, and at that holistic level, and that's the Windows team, or Windows, Microsoft as a whole, across many products, has a strategic goal. It's for 6 months, right? They Microsoft calls it the season. I don't know if they call it this, right? But us looking in, observing what they're doing, many people call it the season-based model. So they have 6 months in a season, and they're looking out 3 seasons, current season plus 2 more, right? So that could be up to 18 months, but somewhere between 6 and 18 months they're looking out. And one of the things that they wanted to go after, the market shares that they wanted to go after as a business, from their consumer products, was creators. So there are people writing books, there are people drawing pictures, there are people making music on computers, right? We want to go after that group of people, that market share, and we want to increase our market share in that space. So they created this idea of the creators update. That's kind of what they call it, right? That again, they do a spring and a fall update across the board. That's kind of like that cadence of the season-based model, the 6 months. So within that 6 months, they're overriding product goal, product focus across all of their products. Season focus is to help creators create stuff. That's that overarching thing. And then each team, each group, each product group, and then each team inside of that works under that story is trying to figure out what can we do to help further that. So I remember the I don't have one here, but the pen support folks in Microsoft moved from 255 pressure levels to 1024 pressure levels. That was one of the things they did. So that required the people who make the pen, the people who make the screens, the people who make the operating system, right, to all work together in order to work towards this idea of improving pen support. And that was to enable artists and enable that. And then they have software that comes off that, and they create SDKs and all this thing so that other people can build products on top of that. That was one of the endeavors in that. And that was just for drawing on the screen or writing on the screen, right? That effort to all work together improved their market share, right, in the creator space. That's what they were trying to do. But then they realized during, right, they've got their 6 months, 3 seasons planned out. They've just finished the creators season, so their product is shipped. It's everybody's 950 million people using Windows, and I don't know how many of them are creators, right? But they're getting feedback and telemetry and getting all that stuff. And then they realized that they needed another creators update because they didn't quite move the needle as far as they would like. There was certain feedback, and then they're going to do that again. All of that is product discovery. So it's really big. It depends on the scale of your organization, right? How big the scope is. But that is the scope of product discovery that you and everyone in your organization should be focused on, from the lowest person doing the work all the way up through the business to whoever's in charge of that, whatever level you roll up to, right? So that could be Azure DevOps rolling up to the head of Azure DevOps, but then it eventually rolls up to Satya, right? The CEO of the organization. And Satya has lots of products and lots of different parts of the business, from consumer-focused parts of the business to non-consumer-focused parts of the business, business-focused parts of the business. So how do we enable and align all of these things so that we are an entity that's all working together towards these common goals, towards these common outcomes? And that is part of product discovery, because you deciding what your product needs isn't necessarily going to create the best outcomes, because we're narrowing the choices to what you can imagine. If we expand it out to include all of the people working on your product, we're diversifying and perhaps generating more ideas for how we can solve these problems in more interesting ways and help our customers even more and open out new markets and new capabilities and new ways of doing things. And that, yeah, product discovery is huge. It's huge, and it is very underserved in organizations. It's not very deliberate in organizations. And that's one of the things, one of the reasons there's a lot of shift in focus in the market towards product. Many teams are good engineering teams. They're good at building solid, usable working product on a regular cadence. But if they're not provided with focus and direction, they're not going to go anywhere. If that focus and direction doesn't provide additional market share, additional market opportunities, then the investment goes away, right? There's only so long companies will invest in something that they don't feel like they're getting a return on. So product discovery is all of those things that happen within the business in order for people to figure out what they're going to go build.